The Tale of the Forgotten Garden. Chapter 1. The Discovery of the Silver Key. In a small village at the edge of a vast forest lived a girl named Eliza. Eliza was curious and loved exploring the world around her. One bright morning, while wandering through the forest, she stumbled upon a narrow path she had never seen before. The path was overgrown with vines and flowers, as if it hadn't been walked for many years. Excited by the discovery, Eliza decided to follow the path. It twisted and turned through the trees until she found herself standing in front of a large iron gate. Beyond the gate lay a garden, but was unlike any garden Eliza had ever seen. It looked forgotten, with bushes growing wild and flowers blooming in strange patterns. Yet, despite the overgrown plants, the air was filled with a magical energy. Eliza tried to open the gate, but it was locked. Just as she was about to leave, a tiny voice spoke. "You found it, the forgotten garden." Eliza turned around, startled, to see a small, glowing creature fluttering nearby. It looked like a fairy, with delicate wings and a mischievous smile. "I'm Iris," the fairy said. "You are the first human to find this garden in over 100 years. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Secret. Eliza stared at the fairy in surprise. "What do you mean, the forgotten garden?" she asked. Iris flew closer and explained. "A long time ago, this garden belonged to a kind old lady who cared for it. She loved it so much that the garden itself became magical. But one day, she disappeared, and the garden was forgotten. The magic slowly faded, and the garden has been locked ever since." Eliza looked at the gate again. "But why is it locked? How can I open it?" Iris hovered above the gate and pointed to a small keyhole. "There's a key, but it's hidden somewhere in the village. If you can find it, you'll be able to enter the garden and maybe even restore its magic." Eliza felt a thrill of excitement. A hidden key, a forgotten garden, and magic. This was exactly the kind of adventure she had always dreamed of. She thanked Iris and promised to return with the key. Chapter 3. The Clue in the Cottage. Eliza returned to the village and thought about where to begin her search. The only place she could think of was the old cottage at the edge of the village. It had once belonged to the woman who owned the garden. Eliza had heard stories about the cottage that was filled with forgotten memories and treasures. The cottage was abandoned now, with its windows dusty and the roof slightly crooked. But Eliza wasn't afraid. She knocked on the door, just in case, and then gently pushed it open. Inside, the cottage was dark and quiet. Eliza looked around and noticed an old book on the table. As she flipped through the pages, a piece of paper fell out. It was a letter, written in faded ink. "Whoever finds this letter," it read, "the key to the garden lies where the sun kisses the first blossom of spring." Eliza thought about the words. Where did the first blossom of spring grow? She would need to figure it out to find the key. Chapter 4. The Blooming Tree. Eliza spent the next few days searching the village, asking neighbors if they knew where the first blossom of spring usually appeared. Most of them shook their heads, but finally, an elderly woman named Mrs. Greaves smiled and said, "That must be the old cherry tree in the middle of the meadow. Every spring, it's the first to bloom." With new hope, Eliza hurried to the meadow, where a grand cherry tree stood tall. Even though it wasn't spring, she could imagine how beautiful it would look covered in pink blossoms. Eliza began searching the ground near the roots of the tree. After some time, she spotted something shiny between the roots. It was an old rusty key. Eliza's heart raced as she picked it up. Could this be the key to the garden? Chapter 5. Entering the Garden. With the key in hand, Eliza rushed back to the forest. The iron gate to the forgotten garden stood as still as before, but this time, Eliza knew she could open it. She carefully inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The gate creaked open, and Eliza stepped inside. The garden was even more enchanting up close. Despite being overgrown, there was something magical about the way the plants moved, as if they were alive. Flowers of every color lined the path, and strange vines twisted around ancient statues. Iris appeared again, fluttering excitedly. "You did it," she exclaimed. "Now, we must restore the garden's magic. But there's one last task. You must find the heart of the garden and awaken it." Eliza nodded. "Where is the heart of the garden?" Iris pointed towards a large stone fountain in the center. "It's hidden there, beneath the water." Chapter 6. The Fountain's Challenge. Eliza made her way to the fountain. It was covered in moss, and the water looked dark and still. Iris explained that the heart of the garden was a magical stone, but it had been lost in the water long ago. Eliza hesitated for a moment before dipping her hand into the fountain. The water was surprisingly warm. She felt around, searching for the stone, but all she could feel were smooth pebbles. After what seemed like hours, she finally touched something different, a round, glowing stone. Just as she pulled it out of the water, the garden around her began to shimmer. The flowers bloomed brighter, and the vines that had seemed tangled and wild now appeared elegant and graceful. "The magic is returning," Iris cried happily. Chapter 7. A New Beginning. As Eliza held the glowing stone, the garden transformed. The air filled with the sweet scent of flowers, and the trees seemed to whisper with life. Birds appeared, singing melodies Eliza had never heard before. Iris hovered beside Eliza and smiled. "Thanks to you, the forgotten garden is alive again. You've restored its magic, and now it will bloom forever." Eliza felt a deep sense of joy. She had not only unlocked a forgotten place, but had also helped bring back something beautiful and full of wonder. Before she could ask Iris what would happen next, a soft voice spoke from behind her. Eliza turned and saw an old woman, dressed in simple clothes but with kind eyes. "Thank you, my dear," the woman said. "I am the guardian of this garden. For years, I've been waiting for someone to restore it." Eliza realized this was the woman from the old stories. "I'm so glad I could help," she said. The woman smiled. "You've done more than that. You've saved the magic. This garden will always welcome you and anyone who seeks its beauty." Chapter 8, The Eternal Garden. From that day forward, the forgotten garden was no longer forgotten. Eliza visited it often, and sometimes brought her friends to see the magical flowers and hear the birds sing. The garden, once hidden and overgrown, had become a place of peace and wonder. It was a reminder that even the most forgotten places could be brought back to life with a little care and kindness. And as for Eliza, she knew she would always be welcome there, where the flowers bloomed brighter than anywhere else, and the magic of the garden would never fade. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. See you next time.